Welcome to Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. Each week, the NI Bullpen will be covering the world of comics, talking to creators, deep diving into some fantastic stories, and much more. Now let's hand it over to the team and turn a page.
And what is going on, everyone? It is Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you are tuned in for an all-new edition of Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also Nerd Initiative Editor-in-Chief. To my right, your left at home, we have a special guest joining us. You know him as the guy behind the chair. You know him as the head of Wrestling Night Live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at Nerd Initiative. But if we're talking Space Ghost, you know there was no chance in the cosmos he was missing this episode. Please give a warm welcome to the one and only Rich.
The black sheep of Nerd Initiative is back in the limelight, and I'm happy to talk about some Captain Planet. I'm happy to talk about some other books that we're going to talk about, but I'm real excited to eventually talk about some Space Ghost as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And last but certainly not least, it is in his own contract. He does his own intro.
Manager 11 Eric, straight from the ODPH studios. My name's Off the Cuff Tom, Nerd Initiative's pop culture connoisseur. Ken, Rich, David, always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And if you are a comic reader right now, chances are you have one, if not many more, of this gentleman's titles in your collection right now. Absolutely crushing it no matter what book he's on, whether it's Cable Love and Chrome for Marvel Comics, the upcoming Speed Racer for Mad Cave Studios, and even the 10-ton Titan Terrier. And obviously one of Nerd Initiative's favorite series out right now, Space Ghost by Dynamite Comics. The hits keep coming and coming, and we're here to talk about the next big hit that you absolutely cannot afford to miss at the comic shops when it drops, and that is Captain Planet and the Planeteers. The FOC is Monday, March 31st. It's on sale April 23rd. You can tell by my sound of my voice, I am excited to talk to him. Please give a warm welcome to the one and only David Pepose. David, what's going on?
What an amazing intro. Thank you guys so much. So happy to catch up with you and excited to talk comics with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for coming back on. We are amped up to talk about this because everybody here at Nerd Initiative is massive Space Ghost fans. And then we heard about the new project that was coming out. And honestly, to get our entire bullpen to stop what they're doing and immediately start hitting our message board, a little peek behind the curtain here at Nerd Initiative, everybody went, Pepose is writing Planet? Like what? It just spiraled down for like a good, I want to say, hour-long thread in the chat. So let us talk about this. How did this whole project come to be?
Yeah, so Captain Planet's my white whale. I've actually been pitching this book around the whole industry for pretty much since my first book. I've thought for over a decade that Captain Planet was overdue for a relaunch, and I think for me it's because it has all the ingredients for a blockbuster. I know Captain Planet sometimes gets a bad rap for being a product of its time or for its politics maybe being unsubtle. I would argue that reality's gotten a lot less subtle in recent years, and for me, Captain Planet, it's got that that commitment to diversity and multiculturalism in a way that's so organic, in a way that we really haven't even seen since the days of Giant Size X-Men. It tackles these very timely concerns about environmental disaster and the human greed that fuels it. And also pop culture has caught up to it. We've pitched this book as X-Men meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. And so we're able to kind of take these people who they really do represent the world outside your window. These are the kinds of people that you can run into on the street, and you give them this sudden extraordinary powers of bending the various elements in these really cool and visually exciting ways. And you put all these things combined and you've got a real recipe for success. So I'm really excited for this book. When Dynamite announced that they had gotten the license to Captain Planet at San Diego Comic-Con last year, I marched over to Nick Barucci and Joe Rybant, and I said, if nobody's on this book, it's got to be me. Hold on to your dreams. Sometimes they come true.
Oh, that's amazing. And like I say, the buzz going on with this book right now, we can't stress enough. Everybody needs to get down to the LCS and make sure you pre-order this.
Yes,
absolutely. And now, David, can you explain to those of us who are not of the awesome generation like we are, yourself included, what is Captain Planet? Give us a quick breakdown.
So Captain Planet is the story of 5 extraordinary ordinary people from around the world who are given 5 elemental rings that allow them to control earth, wind, fire, water, and heart. And when they use their powers simultaneously and they combine their powers, it summons Captain Planet, who's sort of this immortal elemental demigod who's able to, it's a little forever people in that way. And so they wind up going on adventures, trying to not just save the environment, but stopping the eco villains that are sort of their greed and ambition is causing them to harm the environment. So it really is. I talk about the X-Men, but it's even maybe a step beyond that. These aren't superheroes. These are ordinary people. They don't have code names. They don't have costumes. And in our story, especially, which is a reboot, it's brand new continuity. You're seeing these people getting these rings for the very first time and figuring out what that means and what happens when a corrupt billionaire wants to find them and track them down and use their rings to exploit them. So it really is a series that I think has been overlooked for a very long time. But I've always maintained that I think it's it was a cartoon that was ahead of its time, and now the world is caught up in both good and bad ways. And so I think Captain Planet and the Planeteers, they really are the heroes of today's moment. And so I take a lot of responsibility. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be able to tell these kinds of stories that I think really meets today's moment.
Well, first of all, I promise to not hijack it early, and I also promise not to talk too much wrestling. However, I have now realized that Captain Planet is definitely the inspiration for Cody Rhodes.
I mean,
Right
I could
down to
see
the
it.
theme song.
I could see it.
Right down to the theme song. We have Captain Planet. He's our hero. He's going to take pollution down to zero. And we have Adrenaline in My Soul, something, Cody Rhodes.
Oh, yeah.
I could see the comparison.
So I just want to make that time. But let's get back on to the better statement here. You said it was your white whale story, and I understand, especially with all the geopolitical stuff with it. Just coming from a pure creator standpoint, what is like the biggest creation draw to doing Captain Planet?
Well, I think it's the characters. I think they're so interesting because they're really rooted in very strong personalities. The original show, you have you have these 5 people from all around the world, and so they each have their own very unique backstory and context that they're coming from, and their own sort of very strong personalities. And so what we've been able to do now that we're sort of revisiting these characters in the year 2025 versus the year 1990, we're able to kind of update them a little bit to better reflect kind of how geopolitics and the environmental conversation have shifted in the last 35 years. So, for example, we have Kwame, who's a former soccer star from Ghana. Who he's kind of having a little bit of a crisis of faith. He's trying to figure out, he has suffered a career-ending leg injury. And so he's trying to figure out kind of like, where is he going from here? And so he controls the power of earth, which, allows him to shape, plants and stone and things of that nature. But also he's kind of the natural team leader. He's someone who's used to kind of directing other people, maneuvering them in terms of the play-by-play of his soccer years. So his arc is very much seeing him kind of step into his own as the leader of the Planeteers. And you have Wheeler, who he's the American of our group. We've recontextualized him as an auto worker from Detroit, which I thought was really interesting. He's the skeptic of the team. He's the one who maybe doesn't really understand why the Planeteers mission matters. Why does it need to be them? I think his arc very much is about justifying the Planeteers as a concept. It's anticipating those questions that readers might be asking. And I think his history as an auto worker, it means he's got a very conflicted view of the environmental movement, that he thinks, what happens when it affects people at my factory? And so I think his character arc is going to be really important in sort of showing the responsibility is in our hands and people like you and me on the ground. Link is my favorite. She in the original cartoon, she was the conservative Planeteer from the Soviet Union. Obviously, things changed quite a bit even in the filming of the original Captain Planet, and so and obviously things have changed quite a bit in Russia today. So we've done a full 180 on Linka. She's our most liberal Planeteer. She headlines an underground eco-activist punk band, kind of in the vein of Pussy Riot. She's she's our team scrapper. She's like our Ilyana Rasputin. She's our Wolverine. She's my favorite of the whole bunch, and she I don't tend to write this way, but she finds ways to really surprise me every script I write. And then that brings us to Guy, who's she's the heart of the team. She's the kid sister of the group. She's a marine biologist from South Korea. And for me, in the original cartoon, marine biologist meant she was in a wetsuit all the time and swinging around with dolphins. And for me, I wanted to take that one step further. When I wrote Savage Avengers over at Marvel, I wrote the Black Knight, and I love that character. There's something very useful about having a scientist in your team who can kind of help connect the dots for things like that. And so, Guy, I like the idea that she genuinely loves her job. She's passionate, enthusiastic about science. But I think that bubbliness sometimes means she's underestimated. And we've got a really cool beat with her in the series where she says, I know the science, like I know this, she knows the stakes better than anybody. And so hope for her is this revolutionary act, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Just curl up into a ball and just wait for it all to be over?
Yeah.
And I think that then bringing up the team is Mati, who's really kind of our biggest glow up of the whole roster. In the original show, he was kind of seen as a little bit of a punchline. He's this wide-eyed innocent with the power of heart. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me what the power of heart was, I'd have a lot of nickels. So for me, I see it as it's tactical telepathy. So our take on Mati, he's an indigenous person from Brazil who his people were forced from their land by corrupt mining interests, and he was ready to fight back in a particularly kind of violent and brutal way. And then he gets the power of heart, and it suddenly cleanses his mind of all rage and anger, and it leaves him to be this avowed pacifist who can absolutely wreck you. He doesn't need to throw a punch because the ring can do so much more than that. It can summon animals. It can reach into your mind and make you see things that aren't there. It also houses Captain Planet's consciousness when he's not being fully summoned.
Oh.
And so, he's kind of our Batman. He's our Shang-Chi. He's like the X factor of the group. He's sort of a little bit of a mysterious loner. And so, he's really fun. He kind of comes in and out exactly when you need him. And then, you have them all combined and they summon Captain Planet, who, he's such a fun character to write. I think he stands kind of shoulder to shoulder with these idealistic, aspirational heroes like Superman and Captain Planet. I pitched him as Superman with metamorphosed powers. He's this mortal elemental champion who has been defending our world for millennia. And we'll get to see bits and pieces of Cap's history over various eras. But when you boil him down, he's somebody who he wants to protect our world because he doesn't want to see anybody die. He's got this kind of heroism and this reassuring aura that I think is classic. I think it's timeless. I think it doesn't go out of style. And so, he's a really fun character who Amon Casalos is responsible for our incredible redesign of the character, particularly with his hot dad beard. And I think that was sort of our one of our top directives when I took on the project. Was I said, we want to redesign the character. We want to give him a full shirt. We want to give him pants, and sort of evolve him a little bit beyond the 90s crop top and the 90s mullet, which I think locked a lot of this series into a particular time and place. And so Amon was the one that came up with the beard, actually, and we all immediately just glommed onto it. This idea of Cap, he is this reassuring fatherly mentor figure. He's sort of the den dad for the Planeteers. And so I think having that beard, it really does fit with the tone and the direction of our story. And you put all these really strong personalities in a room together. It's a real gift as a writer. And I think to answer your question, and I'm sorry I went on a while for it.
No, by all means.
The gift for me is that you have these strong personalities and you've got these really interesting, visually dynamic powers. That's a lot you can play with as a writer. It's always very interesting, and getting to kind of dig into these characters' heads and watch them grapple individually with sort of these broader messages of environmentalism and the fate of humanity, and do we have time to change? Do we have it in ourselves to change? I think that's some really interesting stuff for me as a writer. I think it's these sort of big swing kind of themes and concepts that you don't necessarily always get to do in every kind of book. So it really is, it's the kind of series that you can do some really cool, interesting, and meaningful stuff with to go alongside all the cool elemental pyrotechnics.
So, talking about bringing this bringing Captain Planet back. Dynamite's been playing in the Hanna-Barbera toy box, with Space Ghost, Herculoids, Johnny Quest, all classics.
Yeah.
Why do you think that now is the right time to bring back Captain Planet? All those other series are all based like in the 60s, and Captain Planet was the 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to say that they have. I mean, I know they've got a Powerpuff Girls book as well, and so we're far from the only kind of modern book. And
Right.
if I recall correctly, when they announced that they got the rights to Captain Planet, I want to say that they had talked about a Ben 10 book as well. So I do think that as part of like a kind of a wider initiative, it's not just going to be rooted in the 60s. And even, Thundercats came later than that.
Mhm.
But I think Dynamite's been doing some really interesting stuff in terms of the licenses that they've been picking up, and that all is an offshoot with the ongoing relationship with Warner Brothers Discovery. I think Warner Brothers has been happy with the books that we've been putting out, or I hope they are. If you're watching Warner Brothers, thanks for letting me work with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I should ask my editors why they had picked up Captain Planet, because they had picked up the rights to it before we ever discussed it. I assume my thinking is, having another kind of superhero title that has that kind of cultural cachet is Captain Planet. Even though I don't see the Planeteers as superheroes, Captain Planet himself certainly is one. But yeah, I think why should we be telling a Captain Planet story today? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think first off, like the world has changed quite a bit since 1990. So I think there's this opportunity to kind of update it based on today's, geopolitical landscape. But I think also, given where we're at today, this is not a book that you can like escape the politics. I think for me, you lean into it and you sort of say, okay, like how do we kind of showcase this and earn this in as organic a way as possible. I think that's a big reason why I've been so excited and been carrying the torch for this book for so long is, representation is a core part of what it is. You can't ignore that. And anybody who does is clearly perhaps willfully misreading the source material. I think Barbara Pyle and Ted Turner, who, they spearheaded this series, they were very forward thinking in that regard. So I think politics, it's inescapable at this point. I think particularly where we're at today, it's a common refrain that it seems like the Captain Planet villains are running the country right now. I think these messages of environmentalism and inclusion and diversity and progressivism, these are all things that are a little bit under attack right now. And so I think having a book that really speaks to all these messages in, I think, such an elegant way and such an organic way and such an exciting and inviting way, I think it speaks to one of my core philosophies as a creator and as a reader, which is there's always room to build a bigger table. You can put that on my tombstone. I think drawing more and more people into this business, this industry, this medium that we all love is the only way that it's going to survive. And so for me, I think Captain Planet is one of those books that it allows people from all walks of life to see themselves reflected in it and be treated with respect and with agency. And I think it gives us an opportunity to deliver a message in an exciting and inviting way that I think a lot of people could stand to listen to right now. Not just of the environmental impact, but also I think just the empathy of it all. We're stronger together than we are apart. And I think that's the core message of Captain Planet when you strip everything down. And I think that's something that we could all be reminded of in the year 2025.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something kind of tying in where I was going with my next question here, because you alluded to the cartoon has been around since 1990.
Yeah.
Had the 6-year run or 6-season run, I should say.
Yeah.
And then obviously this has been the dream project to do, was there any kind of challenges for you as a writer to bring these characters from that time period in here per se? Like, I mean, the themes are kind of universal, but what would you say is like the biggest challenge with that?
It's a great question. For me, it was less about how do we bring the characters to the year 2025. I think for that was actually like the hook for me. That was like the thing that was really fun. But to answer your question, I think the big challenge for me, and this was a challenge I had when I was writing Space Ghost as well, is when you're doing the development of it all. for me anyway, I try to find limitations on these characters. You know, whenever you have a character with or set of characters with powers, it's very easy for it to just be like, well, you know, nothing can stop them now. So it's how do you put these characters on the back foot? How do you streamline their mythology? How do you limit them so they don't have these like easy get out of jail free cards? You know, like the Planeteers, you know, the original cartoon, you know, they're immediately summoned to Hope Island, and they've got, you know, they've got the Geocruiser jet, and nobody's asking like, why are these kids unsupervised on an island together?
Yeah.
You know, and
They've got Whoopi Goldberg. It's okay.
and you know, you've got Gaia, who's this, you know, immortal demigoddess who, if things fail with Captain Planet, like she can always kind of yoink them out of a situation when the chips are down. And so for me, you know, I really wanted to put the Planeteers in the heart of New York. I feel like that is kind of the place that represents a book like this. You know, it's where it's the melting pot where everybody lives from every walk of life. But also, you know, I lived in New York during Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Irene. Like, it's also a place where environmental catastrophes do happen. And so, you know, I wanted to do that. So it's really streamlining that mythology that it took me a little bit to figure out, like, okay, you know, how do we make it that like Gaia isn't just going to be a get out of jail free card? So for her, for example, we've actually recontextualized her a bit. She's no longer sort of this ancient demigoddess, but it's more of a Dalai Lama figure. It's generational that, you know, once a generation, someone who's chosen to sort of serve as the vessel of Earth's life-giving energies. And that puts a target on Gaia's back. And so, you know, her Hail Mary is that she has these 5 elemental rings. And when Captain Planet isn't able to save her, she scatters them kind of Green Lantern style and finds these 5 Planeteers. But that was like, okay, like that's an easy way to sort of put the Planeteers in the back foot, is like, they don't have Hope Island to retreat to. You know, the way that we fit in the Geocruiser in all this, I just wrote the issue with that, and I think we found the best possible way that we could include that and incorporate that in the series. So yeah, it's just kind of finding, you know, when you have that kind of sprawling mythology, it's how do you streamline it? How do you kind of wrap these things together in a way that feels organic? And that's usually like the hard part of the story math. But the characters themselves, like, they feel so three-dimensional. They're so interesting. Their voices really are, I think, very natural for me. That goes a long way. And that really kind of helped me, I think, get over the hump as far as like any of the challenges with the developing the story was concerned.
With Captain Planet being a licensed, you know, property, there means there's more chefs in the kitchen, if you will. So have you run into any challenges with, you know, have something you wanted to do, any kind of pushback, or has it been pretty easy going on this one?
Warner Brothers, both with Space Ghost and Captain Planet, have been the best licensor I've ever worked with by a huge margin. They are wonderful to work with. I can't say enough good things about working with the crew at Warner Brothers. They have given me so much latitude and so much freedom. I can think on one hand, let's see, I've gotten exactly 1 note on Captain Planet so far. I'm 4 issues in. And that was like, it wasn't even like a, you can't do this note. It was a, can you add this thing to it, which ended up being a perfect note because it actually made the issue in question even better. So yeah, they've been wonderful partners in all this. Dynamite and Warner Brothers have really given me a ton of freedom, which is why I keep working there. You know, it's like I really feel like I'm able to deliver my best work and to really swing for the fences on some of these overlooked properties. So yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, if anything, I know that's not always par for the course with a licensed property, but I can tell you with Space Ghost and Captain Planet, it's honestly been the easiest licensed work I've ever dealt with.
That's incredible, and that is amazing too, because you think with the history of the character like that, you might have some issues going with, but the fact that you almost have like a free reign about it, that does speak volumes.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful. So shout out to all our friends that we're working with at Warner Brothers if they wind up watching this. Thank you for helping me make my job as smooth as humanly possible.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing too, we were talking about making some changes. I know you alluded to it a little bit, but I want to go back to this. Did you expect the beard to get the big reaction that it did from fans when that originally came out? I know you said
yeah, I was certainly expecting, it is a bold choice, in terms of redesign. But I thought, yes, like I knew there would be some people who, more purists who are like, oh, I don't, I want a mullet. And I'll be honest, like, I don't think that's going to fly in the year 2025. Like, I've been really pleased with seeing how many people are like, ooh, Captain Planet's hot now. Like, and yeah, I think it was one of those things that we experienced it a bit with Space Ghost, in the way that Jonathan Lau, like, really redesigned him as kind of this jacked figure, even before like Absolute Batman came out. So, and I remember the reaction to Ultimate Peter Parker getting the beard. So it was one of those when Amon Casalos, he drew a couple different versions of Cap, and one of them had the beard, and we all kind of just glommed on that. I was like, yeah, like that's going to be cool. People are definitely going to talk about that. But yeah, I think it was one of those, I felt so good about that choice because I think it really kind of helped me key in on a core part of Cap's characterization, which is like, he is definitively older than these guys, not just as like an immortal, but like, he's sort of that dad age. Whereas like our Planeteers are sort of like in their like early 20s, so yeah, I think, I was definitely expecting it. I've been very pleased with the response to it. I mean, we wanted to really reinforce Cap as this sort of immortal elemental champion. And so like, rather than him being made out of flesh and blood, like you and me, like he's made out of like rocks and roots and ice and flame. And so, yeah, the beard was kind of just like a nice way to be like, oh yeah, like he is this immortal champion of the wilderness. Like, of course he'd have a beard. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and like I say, the buzz about that when it first came out, I think that was like the initial jab, and then the hook was just like seeing who was creating this. And like I say, the hype around this, we can't understate, is really rolling into the comic shops this week for the FOC. Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
It's funny. I do remember somebody commenting that I must have given Captain Planet a beard to serve as a stand-in for myself. And let me tell you, my wife was cackling on the couch when I told her that. It's a huge compliment. Don't get me wrong. Certainly not what I would intend. But if somebody wants to make a comparison between me and Hot Dad Captain Planet, it's very kind of you, I guess.
I was going to say, as a dad with a beard,
I say you can see the comparison on screen right now.
I approve
a perfect likeness.
I got
yeah.
So,
yeah, I was gonna say you have to go.
I shaved actually for this. So
I
so
approve of the perfect the dad beard.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's not green. Mine's more of like a wizardly white, little salt and pepper in there.
Maybe I'll try that out if I want to terrify my spouse.
So with all the redesigns and the recharacterizations and that you've alluded to, are the Planeteers going to be running around in those almost uniform-like things? Is Lucian Plunder going to be running around in a lime green suit with, zebra stripe? Is the Geo Cruiser still going to look like, a big flying, compact?
Okay, to answer your questions in reverse order. We haven't drawn the Geo Cruiser yet, so I don't know. I just turned in a script with the Geo Cruisers, so I will know more about that in like a couple of weeks. As far as like the Planeteers and Plunder to an extent, we really wanted to kind of ground them a bit. There's certainly don't have the matching outfits because we're going to have them meeting for the very first time in this book. So we really wanted to have it like, these are street clothes. These are people, you could run into on the street, very everyday wear, but trying to find ways to like incorporate details that represent their personalities a bit. So for example, Kwame, he's got his knee brace, which, that's part of his core characters, that he is newly disabled and figuring out kind of how does he fit in the world now that sort of his dream of being a soccer star is no more. But also like he's got a hoodie and it's got the number of like his favorite soccer player on it. Mati, you've even got sort of like the not quite Adidas symbol on his shirt, this idea of just like, this is a hand-me-down shirt, like his outfit is a little more cobbled together. Linka, she's got her punk gear. She's super fun. And even Guy, she's got like her eclectic nerdy science t-shirt, talking about, I think it's like the science of coffee or something like that. So yeah, I think it really speaks well that Amon Casalos, I have not talked enough about Amon, and I want to talk more about Amon because he is such a find. I was not familiar with Amon's work. A lot of people probably aren't. He did Pathfinder over at Dynamite, and he's amazing. He's got a style that's like a little Gary Frank and a little Steve Dillon. And then you also see like little flourishes of like Doug Bonnke and like Frank Whiteley in the mix. So he does this amazing, like larger than life action stuff, which is all excellent. But Amon is also like a consummate character actor with the way he draws these characters. And so I think you're going to really fall in love with these characters, not just in terms of the outfit choices, but seeing them in action, seeing them having conversations with each other, seeing like the emotion that he brings to the surface. It's really spectacular. And it's definitely something that Amon's not a household name, but I really hope that we get to change that with Captain Planet, because he really came to this book hungry. He came out of the gate swinging, and this book could not be in better hands.
That's amazing. And I think there's going to be a lot of fans really excited about this when it drops on April 23rd. With that being said, is this going to be an ongoing series, or how far are you planned out for this?
Yeah, it'll be determined based kind of on the demand, and sort of my bandwidth and sanity. Our origin story is going to be 6 issues, but there's certainly room to do more. We have a few of the iconic villains that we've sort of kept in our back pocket for stories beyond the origin story. So it is all very TBD. If we wrap at 6, this will be a very satisfying beginning, middle, and end that will have a bunch of the eco villains. But I would certainly, I'd write more of these stories. I could certainly see myself writing 18 of these. So yes, pre-order at your local comic shop. I'm sure this will be a conversation that I will be having with Amon and with Dynamite in the weeks to come.
And with us off the air. So seeing how you've planned things out, I'm going to swing for the fences. I'm going to talk dirty here just for a second.
Ooh.
Captain Pollution.
I can't say. He'd be an interesting villain if he appeared.
Okay.
But you'll have to I think you just have to read it to see if he appears.
How about I swing it this way? Since it's been so long, and now that we have all this different types of pollution, whether it's, electronic pollution or, all the buildup, is that going to become a factor that they have to fight against? Is now that we have all this thrown away computer trash and so on, is there going to be a new line out of that? Every single one of the villains kind of had a gimmick. Where can we go? Is Mal going to start walking around in a cyber suit or something?
We've got some stuff coming. It's definitely I do think that this book is like kind of half superhero book, half disaster movie. So we've got we're going to be building to some very cool stuff. Yes. I think you'll see a bit of it in issue 4. You'll definitely see a bunch of it in issue 5, and you should see some of it in issue 6 as well.
I like it. Well, this is where the hijacking starts. But I will have a segue question, and then I have a statement, and a second question is not prepared. So that's always why the hijacking starts. So with the properties, is there any possibility of a crossover? Let's say Captain Planet meets Space Ghost.
I'm sure there's I'm sure there's a possibility. Every so often I kind of tinker in my head about what would I do with that crossover. I haven't really come up with anything that I think is great yet, but they are there are similarities which are interesting. You've got the young teen heroes teaming up tiers, so that would be there would be some overlap there. And an interesting thing for years that they're no longer the youngerlings in this dynamic, that Janet Jays who are even younger. But at the same time, like Space Ghost is very much, it's in this heightened sci-fi space opera world, whereas the Planeteers are very much rooted in the world outside your window. So, it's a never say never. For me, I mean, I make no secret about this. For me, the thing I want is Space Ghost and Herculoids. I want to do a Space Stars revival.
Please, yes.
So write your congressman. I could certainly add another 8 to 10 issues to my run if we were able to do that. But yeah, I don't. It's I will say, if you want to see like a cool Space Ghost Captain Planet crossover, my buddy Tom Hoskinson drew a really cool like Marvel versus Capcom inspired picture of them when they announced my book. So that's super fun. Maybe I'll post that again on Twitter later tonight.
So as part of the hijacking, I will say this. I've had the privilege of reviewing Space Ghost for Nerd Initiative. And I am not very shy about telling everybody I can, everywhere I can, even today to these two gentlemen who have heard it a bunch of times, how the best book, bar none, in the comic shop is Space Ghost. If you are not reading Space Ghost, you are making a big mistake. Go back, read it, get it, got it. It's amazing. From start, it's one of the books that I think one of the praises I've given it multiple times, because it has to be. It's one of the only books I've ever read where every issue seems like it's better than the one before, and the one before it was already great. So I don't know how you outdo it. So with that being said, if you were to take an issue off, which I don't want you to do, but if you were, I'd still be like, this is still the greatest thing ever written. So that's just a statement there. But with that, with doing Space Ghost, and everything that you've done, like the incredible like family messages put into it, the tugging at all of our heartstrings in issue 10. I mean, let's be honest, that's probably, it's my early contender for comic of the year. I've already told the person I need to tell, who's the editor-in-chief over here, that I will be fighting to the death for that come the nerdies time.
The cheersies.
So the cheersies. I said the nerdies. I'm talking about our wrestling stuff too.
So
come that time.
That's how amped up he is. He's all over the place
going
right
wild.
now.
I'm going to put it into everything. So I'm hijacking other companies out there. Just know, if you have an awards show and I have any way to write in, this could get real bad real quick. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyways, so with doing all of that, with that all being said, how have you really found, and I mean, we talked to you before about it, but how have you really found time to tap in and just like somehow just control this narrative that's taken a project that is like, it's an old project, and tying it into the cartoon, not talking about what we all remember from Adult Swim. You're tying it into the original cartoon. And how have you made it just so relevant? Because I mean, I'm not the only one that feels that way. It seems like everybody I talk to, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you to say. I mean, I've been lucky that my schedule has broken up in such a way that I am able to keep my head above water. I don't take days off, but like I definitely, I'm writing pretty fast and furious. I've been writing pretty fast and furious since like September, which is when I was officially offered Captain Planet and officially offered Speed Racer within like a week of each other. But yeah, I think, like it was one of those things, like I was wrapping up on Cable when I picked up, when I really got to work on Speed Racer, and Captain Planet. Like I'm sort of able to kind of dodge between the raindrops in terms of making sure that I turn in a script, when I'm on finishes the previous one. Space Ghost is always the challenge, because Jonathan Lau, who's an incredible artist and one of the best collaborators I've ever worked with, but the man draws like a damn Terminator. And so like that guy, I'm kind of like, oh geez, like Jonathan's coming up again. That is a book I definitely don't usually write on a monthly basis because Jonathan draws so quickly. But yeah, I think it's just, I'm sort of keeping where I'm at right now. I'm writing 3 books simultaneously, and that's like a pretty good clip for me. It's fortunate that like the books do have their own unique vibe, so I don't feel like I'm doubling up. I do feel like I kind of ran into that a few years back. I was writing Moon Knight, City of the Dead, and Punisher, and The Devil That Wears My Face concurrently, and so that was a challenge for me because those were all kind of dark, grim, street level books. So it's the challenge of like, how do you make them feel different tonally and in terms of the voice and the action and everything. But I think I'm really lucky that I've these projects that I feel passionate about, that I really do feel like I have the freedom to kind of deliver some of my best work. And I think that kind of keeps the wind at my sales. And it's also a matter of just like learning certain things, about myself as a creator that, I'm learning ways to kind of streamline my process without sacrificing, the quality, and finding ways to kind of like, here's an example. This is kind of a weird, dumb trick that I've just learned just in the last couple of months. I tend to do when we do what's called a lettering pass. You turn in your script, the art comes back, and then you kind of do revisions on your script to make sure that like it fits the art of what you're given. I tend to do mock-ups, just to be like, okay, like, does this fit? Does this feel overwritten? Is there a balloon that I can cut? It helps me visualize these things. But what I've been doing lately is actually when I'm writing dialogue, I actually now I make a mock-up of the dialogue in the lettering font. Because I'm like, okay, like this will save me time later when I get the lettering back, or when I get the art back for lettering, that I don't have to necessarily like tinker quite as hard on it because I've already done it. So things like that, or figuring out, like, it's always a constant reminder for myself that like sometimes I get in my head, I'm like, I gotta write this thing linearly. And it was like the first lesson I ever learned as a writer is like, no, you don't. Like, write the thing that's like easiest. Like, all you have to do is kind of chip away at pages until it's done. So you can do that from any angle, from any direction. Just because you're reading it linearly doesn't mean I write it that way. So things like that, But yeah, I think it boils down to, I'm just very lucky to be working on projects that I really feel so passionately about, and so that makes the job a lot easier.
And for anybody in the chat who is wondering, is it worth it? Yes, Space Ghost is 110%. And that's not coming from me being a fanboy of Space Ghost, because like another Dynamite production that you're not doing, but Thundercats, yep, I'm a huge fan of. And I love the comic, but I grew up as a huge Thundercats fan. So Tom knows this. I love Thundercats. So like I have a lot of passion towards that, because that was what Space Ghost, I mean, I was familiar with it, but it wasn't my, go-to. So the fact that the comic is that good to me just speaks volumes about the writing. And of course, Jonathan Lau's art is phenomenal.
He's fantastic. Jonathan, I want to give him a shout out, because he really he elevates this book in a really profound way. I mean, when Joe Rybant, my editor, and I were talking about possible artists on the book, and Jonathan's name came in conversation, I was immediately like, it's got to be him. Like, I've been a fan of his since Green Hornet with Kevin Smith years ago. And Jonathan, he's a storyteller. Like, he makes strong choices. Sometimes he'll kind of throw me curveballs. I'll be like, one example that I always like to talk about, issue 2 of Space Ghost, where Space Ghost like flies up into the atmosphere and punches out an asteroid. When I wrote it, I was like, okay, like this will be kind of our way of like kind of delivering some backstory. And then Jonathan and Andrew Dahlhaus, our colorist, deliver these pages. I'm like, oh, this is the most beautiful sequence I've ever been a part of. Or the end of our Metalis storyline, where it was going to be a quieter finale, that Space Ghost has punched out this guy, and then he's holding him saying, is he going to kill him? And Jonathan draws this panel where he's like rapid fire Super Saiyan, like punching the guy in the ground. And I was like, yeah, that's cooler. That's way cooler. So yeah, I mean, Jonathan really is like, he's our not so secret weapon on this book. He really is a talent that I think has been overlooked for a very long time. And I'm so glad that people are finally starting to put the respect on his name that he has always deserved.
Yeah, because the series definitely deserves all the praise that it's getting. And it's the one thing that I know when we talk to our community here at Nerd Initiative, when we're getting comments in on New Comic Book Day after an issue comes out, we're having more fans go, I didn't even know about this series, but now I'm deep diving back into it. And we're getting, and that's the one thing that is winning everybody over, because it's not just, I don't want to say it's a kid's cartoon, but where it goes with everything is so many different elements involved. I think that that's what's winning over the broader audience. And I know that technically issue 12, which is dropping on April 16th, is the last one we're seeing solicitations for.
They just added the annual in June, in the June solicits. So that annual marks the end of my first year on the book. But I think we can say it. There is more coming. I'm literally about to start that next batch that is literally the next thing I'm working on. So yeah, I think we've actually seeded some things that we'll be addressing in future stories already. So I'm thrilled that the sheer response to a book like Space Ghost, seeing that kind of reaction. Yes, there will be more. It's kind of TBD how much more. I believe I'm on the book. Well, I don't want to put a number on it yet because the things can shift and evolve.
Mhm.
But yes, I've got at least another trade in me. So yes, and we've got some really fun stuff coming because there are a few Space Ghost villains that I really like that I didn't get a chance to dig into yet. So we'll be seeing some of those, and they'll be filling some interesting kind of different ways, different kind of archetypes that will fill Space Ghost Rogues Gallery, and also add some new personal stakes to Space Ghost dynamic with the twins as well.
Nice.
But before I turn it over to Tom, because Tom's got a question, I'll end the hijacking. I just want to answer this because there's something in the chat that I really want to address. I'm the guy. Like, I wasn't really familiar with Space Ghost before. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't, it wasn't in my realm. My only real notice of the character was the talk show on Adult Swim. So that has nothing really, other than the characters, to do with the comic or with the cartoon. So yes, there are people who watch it who didn't watch that are into this comic because it's that good. And
I'd even say you're my target audience if you haven't watched it before. We've put out a series that I think is very accessible. That all you need to do is pick up issue 1. And our first trade is already out, and our second trade will be out, I think, around probably June or July when the annual comes out.
See, and I will say on the flip to that, I'm more familiar with the cartoon, the original run, as opposed to the Adult Swim series. So seeing, all the care that you've taken in that series to, just elevate it again. Yes, Rich might be the target demographic, but we appreciate it too, because you're doing the work.
Thank you.
Now, speaking of cartoons, because that's my thing, again, Dynamite sticking in those Hanna-Barbera, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers franchises. What other, IP in there would you like to write? Now, I have a personal one that I think you would do a phenomenal job with, but I want to hear your opinion first.
In terms of, you said the Dynamite stable?
So that would be, what can you add from, say, the Warner Brothers, Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera shows?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
All right, I'll throw you mine. How about this?
Okay.
SWAT Cats, the Radical Squadron.
Boy, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said I should be writing SWAT Cats,
you'd have a lot of nickels.
Some Street Sharks. People mention those all the time. I'll be honest. I'm not as familiar with those. I did miss the boat on those when they were coming out. There's certainly other licenses that I'd love to do something in the Turtles world. I know that's not Dynamite, but Turtles is like, a bucket list. I grew up in the heyday of Turtle Power. It's one of my favorites. Voltron could be cool. I'll
say this right now to the whole Nerd Initiative Bullpen. Dibs.
But you know what? I would have to watch. I did not get a chance to catch up on like the last relaunch of the show.
Amazing.
So I would have to make sure I'm not like doubling up too
I
much.
cried at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it, I think it's finding the right license. I will say, and Dynamite knows this. I mean, I would love to do something in James Bond world. That is certainly a white whale. Another one. And my editors know this. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that like I'm aware that I've carved out kind of a surprising niche, surprising to myself at least, of doing kind of the licensed like cartoon stuff and working really hard to put respect on their names and to do them justice. But I want to make sure that I am deliberate with the ones that I do pick up, that to make sure that like I have the bandwidth for it, that I have an angle emotionally, there's something that I have to say. But I'll be honest, like Space Ghost, I didn't have a burning affinity for the character when I was offered the book. I saw the potential. I saw that, like, oh, this is a character that's been overlooked, and oh, there's a really interesting emotional spine to it with Space Ghost, and how do these twins wind up in his orbit, and how do they wind up becoming his trusted sidekicks in this like Dr. Grant, Tim and Lex kind of way from Jurassic Park. So I think if I find like that kind of angle, that like I feel something emotional there, sure, never say never. So yeah, and also the great thing about comics as a medium, comics as an industry, I should say, not a medium. It always finds a way to surprise you in terms of assignments. I think Captain Planet and Moon Knight City of the Dead are the only times that I've ever like called my shot and gone it. Every other book has come out of like way left field. Or I guess I should maybe create our own work, of course. But even Scout's Honor was like one of like a dozen log lines I sent to Aftershock, and it was the one that I had just kind of dashed off to like complete the dozen. And they were like, that's the one. So, this industry, I like to leave room for surprise, because oftentimes it means that like I get offered like a really cool assignment that I would have never expected. It's much easier to be limber and just kind of let what comes than like always be kind of saying, well, I got to write Doctor Strange, or I got to write Force Works, although call me Marvel if you have either of those available. You want to be limber, just kind of take the stuff as it comes and then kind of weigh it once the opportunity is in front of you.
Nice.
So to continue with cartoons for just a brief second, I was saying as a person born in the 80s, that grew up in the 90s, my two favorite cartoons of all time, and once again, I get to review one of them, is Thundercats, which is a phenomenal book. And my other favorite, and you mentioned it a minute ago, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Kind of curious, what were your favorite cartoons growing up?
Well, certainly Turtles. Big Raphael fan here, although I think I'm more of a Leonardo in real life. X-Men animated series.
Yeah.
That ruled. I really liked Batman Superman Adventures. I am blasphemous that like the original style of the Batman cartoon, I wasn't as big of a fan of, but once they kind of redesigned it in the more Superman style, I was all over that.
When they did the station jump from from Fox to Warner Brothers.
Yeah. What else was there? There was I only hazily remember it, but I used to watch it like clockwork, was Exo Squad. And also, when I could watch it, big Sailor Moon fan. That was sort of my first exposure to anime, and I fell in love with that style. And I remember I watched Men in Black. I watched obviously Spider-Man, Batman Beyond. Power Rangers is live action. It's not a cartoon, but it might as well be.
Wait, we're talking Power Rangers?
Oh boy,
that's it. We're just gonna
Pandora's box has been opened.
I am the Power Ranger guy.
I'll admit before you dive too deep into the rabbit hole, I go by what I call first generation Pokemon rules, which is like I was there through like Tommy becoming like the White Ranger.
Yep.
With like the White Tiger Zord, and then suddenly I had to start going to piano lessons, and then I fell off of Power Rangers because it was at the same time as my piano lessons. So I'm certainly not up to speed on like the later generations, which I'm sure is completely disqualifying at this point in terms of me ever writing the Power Rangers. But I think those are the ones that spring to mind. I'm sure there will be others that I have forgotten, but those are certainly my favorites.
Good list.
Yeah, I mean, great list.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong. And especially, I know we're running out of time too. You've got a big 2025 going on right now. With 3 books that are out. One is out now, one is coming very shortly, and one is down the road. I'm throwing the graphic up right now. Cable, Love, and Chrome. If everybody is not checking this book out, it is phenomenal. I'm now putting it out in the universe. I need you on a Cable ongoing after this series.
Write your congressman. Yeah, listen, I'll say as long as I'm working with Tom Brevoort, I would do that. I love working with Tom. He's been my editor on almost every project at Marvel. He's got a lot of integrity. His storytelling instincts, I think, are laser guided. He really holds my feet to the fire to make sure I deliver my best possible work. And this Cable story certainly wouldn't have existed without him, but also none of my other books. All of my books exist because Tom Brevoort put in the time and invested in me and pushed me to level up as a creator. So I owe him quite a bit. But yeah, Cable Love and Crumb, for those who haven't been picking it up, it's a time travel romance story. It's Edge of Tomorrow meets The Fault in Our Stars, about Cable having to face mortality in the form of his ongoing condition, the techno-organic virus, which we've kind of drawn a parallel to chronic lifelong conditions like cancer, ALS, Crohn's, what have you, and how he meets a freedom fighter from the future who has the same condition as him. And so it's sort of this ongoing conversation of what is it that you have to live for when you live with a chronic condition like the techno-organic virus, and how do you come to terms with your own mortality, and how do you go out on your own terms? Do you do it in a hospital bed, or do you die with your boots on? But with all the kind of like larger than life pyrotechnics and time travel action that you would expect from a 90s Cable book. So it's been a really fun book. I am so blown away by the response to it. It's one of the best reviewed books in my career. I was also a little on edge, when it came out, of just like, would people accept a time travel story, or not a time travel story? They would definitely accept that, a romance story with Cable. And seeing people respond to Commander Avery Ryder and say like, oh yeah, like she feels like a great fit for Cable. I love hearing it. So thank you guys for taking the time to cover it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. This is a staple in my pull list, and like I say, if I have to email Tom every day, I'm going to email him every day. Like, I need you on there's 2 books at Marvel I need you on. Cable is one, and ever since Savage Avengers, I need you on a Cloak and Dagger book, even for like a limited series. And even tie in Flash. And if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, go get the Savage Avengers trade paperback, and that's how I'm going to leave with that. And then obviously, okay. I'm just sorry, I had to get my fanboy moment out of the way there because I love that series. But then coming up, new comic or free comic book day in May, we got Mad Cave Studios and Speed Racer.
That's the Saturday Night Cartoons line.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, similar to my approach on Space Ghost, this is going to be brand new continuity. So all you have to do is pick up our first issue, get in on the ground floor, or you can pick up our free comic book day issue. We've written it as such that if you do pick up the free comic book day issue, it's going to be super fun, and it's a self-contained story that kind of sets up our world and Speed's status quo. But also, if you just pick up issue 1, you're not going to be left behind. So it really is writing like 2 different issue 1s for this book. But yeah, Speed Racer, it's Rocky in a race car. It follows Speed Racer's journey from winning illegal back alley street races to becoming a Formula X champion. And what is it that puts him on that path on the racetrack? We get to see Speed. We get to introduce his supporting cast for the first time. His fraught relationship with Pops, a car designer who does not want his son, his remaining son, racing. His kid brother Spritel, who we've reimagined as sort of like a street-wise hustler YouTube streamer who's literally live streaming Speed's illegal races for like.
Love it.
This is amazing.
Dibs.
For basically for sponsor dollars. We'll get to see Racer X kind of come in and out of the series like a shark. He's like Batman meets James Bond in a race car. He's the Vin Diesel to our to Speed's Paul Walker. Yeah. And then Trixie, who is so fun. She's the Carol Ferris to his Hal Jordan. She owns this kind of scrappy underdog racing team that is Speed's kind of only option to compete. But as you'll see by the end of our first issue, there are very personal reasons that Speed has to compete and why there's no room for second place. So, it's going to be a really fun series. I'm on that for a particularly long run, 16 issues, including our free comic book day special.
Wow.
It's awesome.
And yeah, the whole thing's already planned out on an issue to issue, page to page basis. So I'm just getting started on that now. We just got our first issue 1 was just approved this morning. So I'm about to hop on to issue 2, but I'm working with artist David Tinto. You might know him from Ultraman or Commanders in Crisis. He and I worked together on Avengers Unlimited a few years back on a chapter there. And we've been friendly ever since. We reconnected at New York Comic Con last year. I just landed this book, and I was like, "Are you free? Do you have anything going on?" And so David has been just sensational. His free comic book day issue is next level. He is the absolute perfect person to be drawing this book. He gets the cars, he gets the speed, he gets that cartoony action. Yeah, it's a sports book with a little bit of crime thrown in for good measure. But yeah, getting to explore Palm City, getting to explore what makes Formula X unique from ordinary racing. In this case, every car gets its own signature weapon.
Twisted Metal style.
Yeah, Twisted Metal style. So, you've got the cutter blades on the Mach 5, but every car gets their own signature weapon on stuff like this. So, yeah, it's been a really, really fun book to work on, and very different than anything else I've worked on. And, when Mad Cave first approached me about it, I love writing car chases. I've done it in, my very first book, Spencer and Locke, and the sequel, even Devil That Wears My Face that came out recently had a carriage chase. I love seeing how we can push comics as a static medium to convey that sense of motion in a car chase. And, all new Ghost Rider by Trad Moore and the Hawkeye issue by David Aja, like those were both like very influential on my process for all this. And yeah, doing this, I was like 16 issues of car chases, like sign me up, man. And so I'm really thrilled with how that book is coming together. And it's, I think I've been writing characters with powers so often lately that it is a kind of a refreshing change of pace to be writing these very human characters who, their cars might be enhanced, but like they are flesh and blood.
Right.
All they have are their wits and their nerve to get them through any particular situation, and their hearts. So it's been a really fun series to write, a surprisingly romantic one also, with Speed and Trixie, but it's also about just like what happens when you're good at something, what happens when you have a calling that is also taken from you, and how do you sort of get back on the horse? How do you sort of come into your own as, in this case, he's not just a racer, he's kind of like an artist behind the wheel. How do you kind of take your calling to the next step and really kind of step up to the plate and rise to the occasion? So yeah, really excited for that book. I think that first issue, I think, is as good of a first issue as I've ever written. So I can't wait for people to get to read it. And Free Comic Book Days, I'm really proud of that as well. Yeah,
I was going to say, we already had that circled on one of the books we're going to be spotlighting when we do our Free Comic Book Day special, but I'm even more sold on this now. Like, sign me up. This is just right up my alley. And much like everybody should be running to the comic shops too, this week, as you're hearing this in podcast form or on YouTube, Captain Planet and the Planeteers FOC is Monday, March 31st. You really cannot afford to miss this if you're a comic collector. If you're looking for big action, David Pepose is going to bring it every time you see his name on a title. You want great drama, same thing. This is a total package, and you can hear the excitement in our voice here tonight. This is what his work does. It gets this emotion out of you. And David, after this issue comes on, we definitely have to have you come back on and talk a little Captain Planet.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And on behalf of my team here, Tom and Rich, I want to say thank you to everybody for checking out the latest edition of Turn a Page. Make sure you get to the comic shop, because when you go to the comic shop and you have a great issue in your hands, such as Captain Planet and the Planeteers on April 23rd, because you pre-ordered it before March 31st, and you see somebody struggling to find something, hand yours off to them. Tell them to turn a page. We'll see you next time.
I'm out.